They were the family everyone waved to the Harpers. A white house with blue shutters, morning routines, birthday balloons taped to the mailbox. Emma, the teenage daughter, always had earbuds in and a sketchbook in her hand. Her little brother Tommy never left for school without his Spider-Man lunchbox. And their parents, David and Laura, ordinary, polite, present. No police reports, no late-night arguments, no signs of danger. Until one morning, everything stopped. April 10th, 2024. A wellness check turns into a crime scene. All four Harpers found dead, peacefully arranged in the living room, like they'd just dozed off together. No blood, no struggle, no sign of forced entry. But on the coffee table, a single object, a diary, purple ink, open to a page addressed to someone named Avery. Emma wrote to Avery like they were her shadow, her truth, her secret. But no one in her life, friends, teachers, neighbors, had ever heard that name before. No Avery in her contacts. No Avery on her socials. No Avery in her life. Just the diary. Just the words. And yet, as investigators flipped through the pages, it became clear. Avery knew things no one else should have known. Each entry was a whisper that felt like a scream. Emma was scared, conflicted, angry, writing not to remember, but to confess. Confess what? And to who? She called them Avery. But Avery didn't exist, or so they thought. The Harper family lived in a house that could have been cut out of a suburban postcard. Freshly trimmed lawn, painted shutters, a welcome mat that always looked new. To the outside world, they were everything a family should be. Stable, loving, safe. David Harper taught history at the local middle school. His wife, Laura, was known for her lemon tarts at the bakery down on Pine Street. Their daughter Emma, 16, stayed out of trouble. And little Tommy, barely 9, loved comic books and hated bedtime. No criminal history, no signs of dysfunction. No reason anyone could imagine why the Harper home would one day become a crime scene. But that's exactly what it became. When police arrived at the home on April 10th, it was quiet. Too quiet. There were no sounds of life. No television humming in the background. No dog barking. No footsteps. Just stillness. A chilling, complete stillness. And inside? All 4 members of the Harper family, gone. What they found would freeze even the most seasoned detectives. No forced entry. No overturned furniture. No signs of resistance. It looked as if the family had simply stopped being. But there was one thing out of place. One thing that didn't belong to the silence. A leather-bound diary. Open. Waiting. Its pages were written in purple ink, slanted, rushed, and full of emotion. And every entry was addressed to someone named Avery. No one knew who Avery was. Emma had never spoken about them, not to friends, not to teachers, not even in the rare moments when her mother coaxed her into conversation. Avery didn't show up in her phone records, her online activity, or her school files. And yet, Emma spoke to them in those pages as if Avery were her lifeline, her confessor, her protector, or her partner. The entries weren't surface-level teenage scribbles. They were layered, intentional. They tracked moods, warnings, odd events, and people Emma no longer trusted, including her own family. Investigators hoped the diary would tell them what happened, but what they read only raised more questions. Was Avery real? Was Emma leading investigators toward a killer? Or had her mind conjured a companion to share the darkness with? And perhaps more disturbingly, was Avery the one pulling the strings? This isn't just a story about a family tragedy. It's about the things we miss, the signs we ignore, the voices we silence. It's about the quietest girl in the room, and the words she left behind that now speak louder than ever. As the investigation unfolds, Think about the people around you. Could someone be carrying this kind of weight in silence? And if Emma created Avery, why? Was it protection? Was it manipulation? Or something else entirely? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. David and Laura Harper were the picture of stability. High school sweethearts. They married young and created a life most would envy. Laura ran a charming bakery in town, famous for its freshly baked cinnamon rolls. David taught history at the local middle school, a respected figure in the community. They had 2 children, Emma, 16, and Tommy, 9. From the outside, their lives appeared perfect, a family living the American dream. But Emma was different. She was quiet, almost painfully so. She rarely spoke in class and kept to herself during lunch. Her classmates noted she never attended sleepovers or school dances. She had no group of friends, always an observer. Emma was often found sitting alone in the back of the classroom, her gaze fixed somewhere far beyond the walls of the school. There was something distant about her, like she was always waiting for something, or perhaps hiding from something. Despite her parents' best efforts, Emma remained an enigma. They tried to reach out, but Emma would only offer fleeting words or awkward smiles. She kept to herself, buried deep in a world only she knew. And that world, it seemed, was made up of words that no one else had access to. She kept a journal. It was her one outlet, the only place where she could express her thoughts and fears. But no one knew of its existence until that night. On the evening of April 9th, 2024, something shifted. The Harper household went completely dark. No one answered their phones. No one showed up to school. Neighbors grew concerned, but no one thought much of it at first. Maybe they were just having a quiet night in, maybe out of town for a quick trip. But when hours passed with no word, the worry grew. By early evening, the police were called for a welfare check. They arrived and entered through the back sliding door. What they found inside was nothing short of chilling. The house was eerily quiet. No sign of struggle, no evidence of forced entry. But there, in the living room, was the Harper family. David, Laura, Tommy, and Emma still, lifeless, peaceful, if peace could ever be that quiet. There was no blood, no weapons, nothing disturbed, everything in its place, as if the family had simply fallen asleep. On the coffee table, there was one thing that stood out: a diary, open, pages worn with use. The last entry read, "Dear Avery, I told you they wouldn't listen." What do you think Emma meant by that line? Was it a cry for help, a warning, or something more? Could it be a message from beyond the grave, or a final attempt to reach someone who might understand? Drop your thoughts and theories in the comments below. The diary, once a mere curiosity, became the focal point of the investigation. It wasn't just a record of Emma's thoughts or feelings, it was something far more chilling. It became clear that this journal was a conversation, a private exchange between Emma and someone named Avery. But who was Avery? There was no Avery in Emma's life. No one with that name was enrolled at her school. No one had seen or heard of an Avery in their small suburban neighborhood. The name didn't appear in any of Emma's social circles or interactions. It was as if Avery didn't exist. With each passing entry, Emma's tone grew darker. What started as simple frustrations morphed into something far more unsettling. She spoke of isolation, fear, loneliness. But there was also something else in her words, a sense of foreboding, a sense that something was closing in on her, that something she couldn't escape. And then, on March 29th, Emma wrote something that sent a chill through the entire investigation. He came to the window again. I think Mom saw him this time. The authorities initially brushed it off. They assumed it was another product of Emma's troubled mind. Just a teenager's vivid imagination spiraling out of control. But the more they read, the more questions arose. And one question in particular began to gnaw at them. Who was the he Emma referred to? What they found next would change everything. Investigators requested the security footage from the side yard, a routine move in any investigation. At first, there was nothing to see, but then, there it was. At precisely 2:12 a.m., a figure appeared in the darkness, slender, hooded, standing motionless at the edge of the property. The figure didn't move, didn't make a sound. It simply stood there, watching. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. The investigators were stunned. Could this be the person Emma had been writing about? Had someone been lurking around her home for weeks, watching her family? As they poured through more entries, the tone of Emma's writing began to shift again. No longer was she writing like a troubled teenager, venting her frustrations. Now, she was writing like someone executing a plan that had been forming for some time. It has to end. They don't understand. But you do, Avery. The words were deliberate, calculated, a stark contrast to the ramblings of a confused teenager. This was a message. A confession, perhaps? Or a declaration of intent? What exactly was Emma planning? What did she mean by, "it has to end"? This was no longer just a case of a disturbed girl and her imaginary friend. Something much more dangerous was at play. Do you believe Avery was real? Or was Emma creating a character to justify her actions? Was the figure outside the window someone connected to Emma's troubled mind? Or someone real? Someone who was part of a larger, more terrifying plan? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Did Emma foresee something none of us could have imagined? The autopsy results sent shockwaves through the investigation. What had seemed like an open and shut case now became a puzzle with pieces that didn't quite fit. Emma Harper had died before her parents, at least 12 hours prior to the discovery of the bodies. The cause of death was clear, a fast-acting sedative mixed with something untraceable, something that experts couldn't pinpoint. But it was the timeline that raised the most alarms. How could Emma have written those chilling final entries in her diary if she had already been dead? Her handwriting, vivid and purposeful, was preserved in ink. But the remaining pages of the diary, those entries contained no fingerprints, not even hers. The investigation, once driven by the tragic and violent end of a family, now had a haunting question. Who had written those last words in the diary? Experts weighed in with unsettling suggestions. Perhaps the Avery Emma had been writing to wasn't a figment of her imagination after all. Maybe Avery wasn't a ghost or a character conjured up by a troubled mind. Maybe, just maybe, they were real. And maybe they were in the house that night. The investigation took a further turn when a page was discovered missing from the diary, a page that had been torn out and hidden behind the bathroom sink. The discovery was unexpected, unsettling. The note was short, but its message was chilling. "I didn't want to do it, but you said they deserved it. You said I had to make them quiet." The handwriting was unmistakable. It was Emma's. But the words, they painted a grim picture. A confession? A plea for understanding? Or something far darker? The search for answers led investigators to a local teen, Jeremy Collins, a 17-year-old who had once exchanged messages with Emma online. Their chat logs were uncovered, revealing a disturbing pattern. The two had engaged in what appeared to be an intense exchange of fictional murder roleplay. A disturbing hobby, no doubt, but in the world of teenagers, not necessarily a red flag until the context changed. Jeremy had an alibi. He had been elsewhere at the time of the murders, verified by surveillance footage and multiple witnesses. But there was something else, something that couldn't be overlooked. In one of their last exchanges, Jeremy had jokingly written, "Call me Avery, lol." It was a comment made in jest, sure, but in the context of everything that had happened, it was a clue that made investigators pause. After that message, Emma stopped responding. What did that mean? Could the Avery Jeremy referenced have been more than a joke? The mystery of the Harper family's death unraveled in a way no one could have predicted. After months of investigation, the truth came to light. It wasn't a supernatural force. It wasn't a random stranger lurking in the shadows. It was Jeremy Collins, the local teen who had once exchanged messages with Emma. He had been watching her, fascinated by her dark thoughts and fantasies. But the line between fiction and reality blurred for him. In the twisted depths of his mind, he convinced himself that Emma's plea for help was actually an invitation. The Avery persona was his own creation, a way to justify what he had already decided to do. In his warped sense of loyalty to Emma, he believed he was carrying out her unspoken wishes. He slipped into the Harper home under the cover of night, silently administering the sedative to Emma first, so she couldn't resist. Then, with the family in a deep, tranquil sleep, he carried out the brutal act of silencing them all. But even after he did the unthinkable, he still didn't have the courage to face the truth, so he tried to hide it in the pages of Emma's diary. Emma's words had been a cry for help, but also a warning. And it was those very words that led to Jeremy's arrest. The case was closed. The families, both the Harper family and the Collins family, left shattered, their lives forever marked by the horrors of that fateful night. But the questions still linger. Was Emma truly innocent in all this? Or had her mind been trapped by a fantasy too dangerous to let go of? Let me know your theory in the comments, and whose side are you on? The truth is never simple. If you want more stories like this, stories that leave you questioning every detail, stories that linger long after the screen fades to black, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell to get notified when the next chilling mystery unfolds. Because you think you know your neighbors, you think you know your children, but behind closed doors, sometimes the most chilling stories are the ones written in ink.